Chapter 164, My Woman. After she called Jinbin, Yi Wanwan glanced at the crowd and realized that more and more people were speaking up for Shen Mengqi, most of them her admirers. Seeing their goddess being hurt by a scumbag, these people were heartbroken and started scolding Song Zihang and his mother. They even pulled Jiang Yan ran back into the picture and scolded her as well. It was as if the most innocent person was Shen Mengqi. Jiang Yan ran looked coldly at Shen Mengqi, who had her beautiful little face covered in tears, looking very pitiful and begging for forgiveness. Then she turned to look at Song Zihang, who was criticizing her non-stop. She closed her eyes tiredly, wanting to leave. Yi Wanwan crept over to Jiang Yan Ran's side and lowered her voice, Are you happy with this? Don't worry, there's more coming. Jiang Yan Ran looked at Yi Wanwan blankly. Yi Wanwan laughed lightly, Do you remember what I promised you before? Jiang Yan Ran instinctively recalled what Yi Wanwan said to her by the lake. She said, Big Missy Jiang, do you want Song Zihang to fall madly in love with you? Want to reveal Shen Mengqi's true colors in front of everyone and ruin her reputation? Want to let Song Zihang see Shen Mengqi's true colors and regret not choosing you before? It was these words that kept her going when she was at her lowest point. She wasn't sure what Yi Wanwan was planning, but she knew that she'd definitely deliver on her promise. At this moment, Mrs. Song was tugging at Shen Mengqi's hair and yelling at her in fury. Song Zihang tried his best to protect her and glared at Jiang Yan Ran with deep hatred. Jiang Yan Ran, I've lost my reputation thanks to you. Are you happy? Are you satisfied now? Shen Mengqi was choked with tears. Yan Ran, I'm sorry. I'm really sorry, Mengqi. You did nothing wrong. Don't apologize to this evil woman. It's my fault for not protecting you better. I should be glad that I saw this woman's true colors before it was too late. Yi Wanwan watched by the side in admiration. Under these circumstances, Shen Mengqi was still able to count on her lies and acting skills to reverse a hopeless situation, regaining her innocent persona. Song Zihang, who'd been used from the beginning and took all the blame at this critical moment, still defended her and spoke up for her voluntarily. Mom. I'd rather die than apologize to this flirt. I'll love only Shen Mengqi in this lifetime. Shen Mengqi's tears triggered the burning anger in Song Zihang's heart. As a proud man, he'd never apologize to Jiang Yan Ran in front of the woman he loved, no matter what. Just as Song Zihang was protecting his sweetheart with self-righteousness and everybody felt touched, a boy rushed over suddenly and pushed Song Zihang aside, embracing Shen Mengqi in his arms. Song Zihang, you're a bastard. You're spouting nonsense. Mengqi's my woman, she has nothing to do with you. You're a perverted scumbag, shamelessly harassing Mengqi all the time. Song Zihang felt dizzy from the push, and when he saw Shen Mengqi in the other boy's arms, he was enraged. I've been harassing Mengqi. Bastard. Who do you think you are? Let go of her. Zhengbin refused to let her go and replied loftily, Me? I'm the person who Mengqi truly loves. Zhengbin, why are you here? Shen Mengqi was flustered. Her gut feeling told her something wasn't right and she tried to send him away. It's none of your business, get going. Chapter 165, Refusing to give up. Zhengbin saw Shen Mengqi's tear-stained face and became even more protective, refusing to leave. I'm not going back. If I hadn't come, you'd be bullied to the death. I have to expose the true colors of this scumbag to everyone. The two guys were so aggravated, like a pair of roosters fighting. They were both unwilling to step back and Shen Mengqi was completely unable to stop them. She could only watch as they fought in front of everybody. Song Zihang yelled, Tell me, what do you mean by my true colors? Zhengbin didn't want to be outdone, so he retorted, You're a toad lusting after a swan. You knew Mengqi had a boyfriend but you keep harassing her. Ha! What a joke. Mengqi's my girlfriend, how could I harass her? Are you insane? Mengqi's boyfriend? Don't tell me you're talking about yourself. Song Zihang sneered without a care for Zhengbin's words. He simply treated him as one of Meng Qi's suitors who had come over to cause trouble out of jealousy. Zheng Bin blurted in a fit of rage, "Yesterday, Meng Qi and I even spoke on the phone the entire night and she told me herself that you were harassing her." Shin Meng Qi's heart thumped and she quickly interrupted, "Stop fighting. There has to be some misunderstanding, can we talk about this in private? Stop making a show for everyone to see." "Alright." Shin Meng Qi tried to persuade the two of them anxiously. Upon seeing Shin Meng Qi's pleading gaze, Song Zihang and Jing Bin hesitated. Not far off, Yi Wanwan narrowed her eyes. If she gave Shin Meng Qi some breathing space today, she was sure that Shin Meng Qi would be able to appease these two guys very quickly. Thus, Yi Wanwan rushed out and pointed towards Song Zihang, burning with indignation, and scolded him, "Well done, Song Zihang. I thought you were true to Meng Qi, but who knew that you've been harassing and forcing her to be with you? How could you do that? Do you think you're worthy of Yan Ran, worthy of Meng Qi? You're an ass-hit asterisk." Song Zihang was aggravated again with Yi Wanwan annoying him, "Ugly freak, get out of my way. Don't try to act all smart in front of me. I've said it before, I didn't force Meng Qi to do anything. You can ask her if you don't believe me." Shin Meng Qi was so angry that she started to feel faint. She shot a look at Yi Wanwan and really wanted to kill her. On the other side, Zheng Bin's fury arose as well. "Song Zihang. I guess you're not going to give up until you see the grave. You had Jiang Yan Ran on one hand and secretly hooked up with Meng Qi on the other. Meng Qi didn't embarrass you on the spot only because you were her classmate and also out of respect for Jiang Yan Ran. In the end, you took advantage of her kindness and harassed her every single day. Let me tell you, you don't have to ask Meng Qi. Listen to this yourself." Zheng Bin brought his phone out and tapped a few times. Suddenly, a conversation between a guy and a girl played on his phone. "Meng Qi. What's going on between you and Song Zihang?" This was Zheng Bin's voice. "I've already said that I have nothing to do with him at all. He's the guy that Yan Ran likes, how could I be with him? It's just that he keeps harassing me and I can't do anything about it." This familiar voice was obviously Shin Meng Qi's. "Let's go public with our relationship then. Tell him and everyone else that I'm your boyfriend. He'll give up then." "No way, we can't go public. My parents are against me dating." "Then why don't you tell Song Zihang that you have a boyfriend? You're not even treating me like your boyfriend." Chapter 166, Confrontation. "Of course, I've told him before but it was no use. How could you say that about me? If you don't believe me, then maybe we should just break up." I believe you. Meng Qi, don't be mad. I just hate that Song Zihang keeps harassing you. He still wouldn't let go after finding out that you've got a boyfriend? This kind of person needs a beating. I'll see to that someday. Don't be rash. He's Yan Ran's crush after all, and I don't want to make a big thing of it. Anyway, so what if he keeps harassing me? You're the one I love. You're my boyfriend, not him. Don't be mad anymore, alright? Give me a kiss then." Following that was Shin Meng Qi and Zheng Bin's lovey-dovey talk, and Zheng Bin kept playing it out loud with pride. "Turn it off. Turn it off now." Shin Meng Qi nearly went berserk when she heard the recording and screamed as she stared at Zheng Bin, "Why? Why did you record this?" Upon seeing Shin Meng Qi's reaction, Zheng Bin frowned and his face darkened. "Meng Qi, what's wrong? I can't let him bully you anymore. As for the recording, I've been recording every conversation we've had over the phone so I can hear your voice. I had to do this since you said that you want to focus on your studies so you can't go out on more dates with me." Shin Meng Qi stood there with her back stiffened. All she felt was the earth and sky spinning. She didn't dare to look at Song Zihang's face or the looks of all the witnesses. When Yi Wanwan heard the recording, it was as if she gained confidence and she marched to Song Zihang triumphantly. "Scumbag. What do you have to say now? I knew it, Meng Qi's such a nice and kind person, how could she be with you even after finding out that Yan Ran likes you? So it was you, scumbag, who was driving a wedge between them. Meng Qi has a boyfriend and you still wouldn't let her go. You have no sense of shame. After Song Zihang heard that recording, he stood there in a daze like he'd been struck by lightning, his face in total disbelief. And what Yi Wanwan just said jabbed him right in the heart. Song Zihang was so mad that he was shaking. His face contorted in anger and his fury reached its peak. He gritted his teeth, his intense gaze directed at Shen Mengqi. Shen Mengqi. I've been harassing you. I've forced you. I'm shameless. When we were at the theme park before, who was the one who said she had feelings for me all along? Who was the one who said that her heart broke each time she saw me with Yan Ran? Who was the one who promised me that she'd be with me after we graduate? Who was the one who made the move to kiss me? Damn it, since when have I ever forced you to do anything? Also, this guy. What's going on between you and him? You already accepted my confession the other day, but you were still on the phone with him last night? And you said he's your boyfriend? What about me then? What am I? Song Zihang tossed out a huge stack of photos from his bag and threw it at Shen Mengqi's face. Every single one was intimate photos of the two of them. Shen Mengqi looked very sweet and didn't look like she was being forced at all. Song Zihang grabbed Shen Mengqi's wrist. There was a silver ring on her finger and it was a couple ring matching the one on his finger. Forced? Her ring, her necklace and this entire outfit. I paid for all of it. Zheng Bin was dumbfounded. This is impossible. I've been with Meng Qi for half a year. Following that, the two of them kept quarreling, going back and forth with each other, thoroughly unmasking Shen Mengqi's cover. Chapter 167, Capsized. Shen Mengqi had managed her relationships well. After Song Zihang's confession, she didn't reply to him on the spot and only acknowledged their relationship in private but denied it completely in front of Zheng Bin, claiming that Song Zihang was harassing her. Shen Mengqi thought that she could fool everyone. Who knew that the two of them would bump into each other? When the two of them met, they confronted each other and were initially fooled by her acting, but her lies were now exposed. At this moment, the crowd watched as the two people fought. The information Song Zihang and Zheng Bin disclosed got more and more shocking, and the onlookers were flabbergasted. Damn, what a plot twist. So it was Shen Mengqi who was seducing Song Zihang. And now there's Zheng Bin involved. Oh my god. Was she two-timing? Shen Mengqi actually had the both of them fooled. What do you mean the both of them? She stole her best friend's boyfriend, two-timed and told endless lies. We were all fooled. Zihang. That's enough. Aren't you embarrassed enough? You caused our Song family and yourself to be in this predicament just for this bitch? You, Mrs. Song gave her precious son a slap. Mrs. Song then grabbed Shen Mengqi and slapped her twice, on her left and right cheeks. Wretch! How dare you seduce a Song? Song Zihang stood there, battered out of his senses as his cheeks burned. He was speechless and didn't react even when his mom slapped Shen Mengqi. He couldn't believe it. He couldn't believe that the girl he'd always liked was this kind of person, toying with his feelings all this time and even dating another guy while she was cuddling with him. As for him, in order to protect her reputation from being ruined, he was made a total fool. You bitch! How dare you lie to me? You actually dared to lie to me. It was as if Song Zihang was suddenly awakened and he charged towards Shen Mengqi like a madman. Ah! Zihang! Hear me out. Shen Mengqi was knocked out of breath from his tight grip and shouted in fear, Zheng Bin. Zheng Bin, help me, why would Zheng Bin save her? It was a blessing that he didn't join in and kick her. He was so angry that his eyes were red. Shen Mengqi. You're good, just because I couldn't give you what you wanted. I couldn't help you become a big star, you went to find another man, and even kept me in the dark this whole time. I thought I was your true love and didn't dare to keep you from your studies. I didn't dare to tell anybody about our relationship, but you used me as a spare tire. Other than Song Zihang, who else do you have in your trap? How many other guys were you cheating on? Hearing Zheng Bin's bellow of rage, everybody clicked their tongues in disapproval and looked at Shen Mengqi's disheveled hair and battered face without any sympathy for her. She deserves it. The boats finally capsized this time. 1. How could you not get your shoes wet if you keep walking by the river? What an eye-opener today. Innocent goddess of Qing, he my ass, more like a scheming woman, a vixen. I didn't. It's not like that. Shen Mengqi slumped onto the floor and shook her head vigorously, the comments around her cutting her like a knife. All along, she was a good student in everyone's eyes and a goddess in every guy's heart. She had never received such menacing glares and horrible insults in her entire life. Her mind was in a blur. She had no idea how things ended up this way and how she got into this state. Chapter 168, Daddy Jiang to the rescue. Yi Wanwan stood a few steps away and watched as Shen Mengqi slumped onto the floor. After some time, she slowly walked over with a face filled with heartache and said softly, Mengqi. How could this happen? How could you do something like that? What about my brother? Did you also ditch him because he was no longer useful to you? Or, is my brother still a spare tire because he still has some use for you? Hearing this, Shen Mengqi suddenly seemed to wake up. She didn't expect that Yi Wanwan could speak right to her heart. She immediately explained anxiously, I didn't. Wanwan, you have to believe me. This was all a misunderstanding. How could I do this to Mu Fan, Ji Yi? I really wanted to help him. Seeing that Shen Mengqi still acted so fake when there was irrefutable evidence made everybody despise her even more. At this time, only the ugly freak, Yi Wanwan, is still listening to Shen Mengqi's fake honeyed words. So it really was Shen Mengqi's strategy all along, seducing whoever was powerful, and when something went amiss, she'd find a spare tire immediately. Not far off, Jiang Yan was speechless as she watched how Yi Wanwan forced Shen Mengqi into this pathetic state single-handedly. Shen Mengqi was acting totally clueless and trying to explain things to Yi Wanwan, looking really anxious. At this moment, Song Zihang pushed Shen Mengqi away and rushed over to Jiang Yan in tears. Yan, please forgive me. I didn't know. I didn't know things would end up this way. That woman tricked me. I really didn't expect she would be so scheming, shamelessly seducing me from the start. Please forgive me this once. At this moment, Mrs. Song was in a rage. Song Zihang had actually been fooled by a little wretch, bringing embarrassment to the Song family. Yan, you saw it too. It was all because of this bitch who seduced Zihang. Can you forgive him this time for Auntie's sake? Which man hasn't made mistakes before? I've beaten and scolded him and he'll never dare do it ever again and will be with you happily. Go back and explain this to your dad. We can't let the issue with the company drag on. This dismissive tone of Mrs. Song made Jiang Yan frown. She pressed her lips together and replied, Auntie Song, I'm sorry, I can't make decisions for the company. As for the engagement, it was exactly like what Zihang said before, it was just a joke by the elders, I just didn't see it clearly before. Upon seeing Jiang Yan's stubbornness, Mrs. Song's face turned gloomy. Yan, do you really want to be so ruthless? Zihang and I have already apologized to you, but you're still so relentless. Do you want to ruin this long-term relationship between our families over this small issue? The moment Mrs. Song spoke, an angry voice resounded from the opposite side. Yan, what happened to your face? Jiang Haichao rushed over anxiously, and behind him was Song Zihang's father, Song Xiaowei. Seeing her dad, Jiang Yan was a little surprised as she covered her red and swollen face with her hand. Daddy, why are you here? I'm fine. When Jiang Haichao saw that his beloved daughter, whom he spoiled from a young age and didn't even dare lay a finger on, had gotten slapped by someone, he couldn't contain his fury. Who hit you? Was it Qian Rulan? She actually dared to hit you? Mrs. Song didn't expect that Jiang Haichao would appear and she grew anxious and quickly explained, "Old Jiang, why did you come down here personally? This was a misunderstanding, I didn't do it on purpose. Actually, it was just a small issue from the start, we really didn't have to drag so many people into this." Jiang Haichao hugged his daughter and was in a towering rage. "Tisk, small issue? My daughter was bullied by your son to the point where she wanted to commit suicide, is this what you call a small issue? After Yan Ran's mom and I received the call that night, we rushed down to school immediately. If it wasn't for someone saving Yan Ran, we'd be looking at her dead body. You call this a small issue? So in your eyes, our Yan Ran's life is just a small issue. Qian Rulan, Song Xiaowei, do you really think the Jiangs are pushovers?" Chapter 169, An Idiot or Two. "Old Jiang, that wasn't what I meant. You said Yan Ran tried to commit suicide." I had no idea about this." Mrs. Song was shocked. Song Xiaowei's face changed. His face was dark as he looked at his wife and son, both of them unable to achieve anything but were great at sabotaging things. He had finally managed to meet Jiang Haichao today to find out what he did wrong. In the end, he learned it was his own son who betrayed Yan Ran first, making him lose all face in front of Jiang Haichao. He tried so hard to persuade Jiang Haichao to be more lenient, on account of the friendship between the two families in order to work together on the project. But then, Song Xiaowei suddenly received a call saying that his wife had gone to the school to stir up trouble. Song Xiaowei glared at his wife and son and could only summon up the courage to say, "Old Jiang, I'm really sorry, Rulan and I were ignorant. If we'd known about this, we never would have let this bastard off." Jiang Haichao sneered, "Ignorant? You guys were obviously ignorant. I recently found out my daughter helped your son get water, washed their clothes and delivered breakfast every day like a servant, found out that your son cheated on Yan Ran right under her nose and embarrassed her, found out that he helped another girl insult her, found out that Yan Ran actually suffered so much. Let me tell you, Song Xiaowei, Qian Rulan, this isn't the end of it. Just wait for your bankruptcy." Jiang Haichao didn't bother with the Song family's explanation and left with his daughter immediately. After everybody found out the truth from Jiang Haichao, they started criticizing the three of them with spiteful stares. "That's too ungrateful of them, how could there be such a shameless family?" At the school entrance, Jiang Yan Ran had to pacify her father for a long time before she finally managed to calm him down. Once calm, she sent him back home. "Wan, you called my dad?" Jiang Yan Ran asked. Yi Wan nodded, "Just in case. It was safer to have a backup." "Thank you," Jiang Yan Ran replied gratefully. "She always has a well-thought-out plan." "Don't mention it, I did it for myself too," Yi Wan replied. Jiang Yan Ran said, "Even if Shen Mengqi tries to talk her way out this time, nobody will believe her anymore." Yi Wan pinched her eyebrows like she had a headache, "There'll always be an idiot or two who'll believe her." Are you saying Senior Yi?" Jiang Yan Ran asked in concern. Yi Wan didn't comment. After all, the IQ of a person in love is in the negative, she knew this very well herself. In her previous life, her brother was still very devoted to Shen Mengqi even after witnessing her flirting with another guy. He even felt useless for not being able to protect the girl he loved. She already knew how hard it would be to brainwash him. After all, you and Senior Yi are blood siblings. Just talk to him nicely, he'll definitely be on your side, Jiang Yan Ran reassured her. Yi Wan took a deep breath and looked at the time on her phone. "No worries, since I exposed Shen Mengqi once, I can expose her again. Don't worry about me. You should head back and have a good rest or find someplace to relax." "Alright. Do you have any plans later?" Jiang Yan Ran asked. "Today's Saturday, I have to go over to my boyfriend's grandmother's place to have dinner. Give me a call if you need anything." "Sure. After she parted with Jiang Yanran, Yu Wanwan returned to the dorm to get changed and removed her makeup. Then, she left through the back door. The familiar black car was already waiting for her at the same place as always. Chapter 170, pouncing on the great devil. Yu Wanwan's long hair was straight like a waterfall and she wore a white dress. She patted her face gently and went into the state of a little innocent white rabbit. When she approached the car, the door of the driver's seat opened and Su-yi quickly got out, opening the door of the back seat for her. At the same time, he couldn't help but stare at her. Although this wasn't the first time he saw her like that, it amazed him every single time. In the back seat, Si-han was busy. He had his laptop out in front of him and a Bluetooth headset on, seemingly in a video conference. She was unsure whether it was because the conference wasn't going smoothly, but Si-han didn't look too good. His forehead had a trace of faint anger and the surrounding atmosphere felt dangerous. Yu Wanwan obviously didn't dare to provoke him. She sat in the corner seat obediently and tried to minimize her presence. When she looked up inadvertently, she suddenly noticed that aside from Su-yi, there was a teenager sitting in the front passenger seat. As usual, the teenager was in an all-black outfit. He had short, neat hair and his expression was stern and sharp, like a weapon. He was the most formidable expert under Si-han, Lu Ying, the person she met in Jean Garden. When Yu Wanwan looked up, she met Lu Ying's gaze in the rear-view mirror. He had the same contemptuous and disdainful look as usual. As for his gaze, Yu Wanwan was already used to it. All the subordinates under Si-han viewed her as a bewitching demon, similar to Bao Si and De Ji, who were infamous concubines who caused damage and suffering to the people in China. The only difference from her previous life was that in this life, she returned to her original appearance, which was more in line with her title of a troublemaking beauty and also attracted more hatred. Although she was already accustomed to it, she didn't want to accept these stares like she'd done in her previous life. She really hated the way this guy looked at her. Ha, he must be having so much fun calling me a vixen and witch in his heart, right? Damn it, your master is obviously the one fighting over me, alright? Don't be so unreasonable. If she didn't prove his accusation to be true, wouldn't that be a waste? Yu Wanwan glanced at Si-han. His face was cold while speaking to his senior management on the screen. She didn't understand everything that came out from his lips. Lu Ying noticed that she kept looking at Si-han and his gaze became more alert and spiteful. The corners of Yu Wanwan's lips turned upwards. In the next second, she suddenly pounced onto Si-han. Si-han was caught off guard and got knocked over. He frowned and was about to speak, but was quickly covered by a soft sweetness. Si-han was obviously stunned. His obscure eyes turned deep almost instantaneously, like a giant whirlpool. His long slender fingers then quickly closed the laptop shut and cut off the screen of the other party. In the video conference, the senior management on the other end was initially focused on the meeting, but then, suddenly a beauty appeared on the screen and it seemed like she'd pounced on their boss. When they tried to have a closer look, the screen turned black. Damn! Woman? A woman actually pounced on the boss just now, in the middle of a meeting? At the same time, there was something darker than the screen: Lu Ying's face. His eyes were as wide as an ox's bell, his cheeks were flushed and his whole face was in disbelief. He was on the verge of exploding. He was actually flabbergasted by the shameless behavior of Yu Wanwan. Even though Su-yi had seen this many times before, he still felt awkward every time and quickly pulled up the divider, cutting off the scene at the back. Humph. Yu Wanwan shot a look from the corner of her eye to Lu Ying's black face. She felt slightly appeased. However, after she let off some steam, she realized she had a bigger problem. Yu Wanwan blinked her eyes stiffly and looked at the great devil she pounced on. Her impulsive decision. She must have eaten a bear's heart and leopard's gall to possess the courage. How did she have the guts to pounce on Si-han? Chapter 171, Dignity. At that moment, Yu Wanwan broke out in a cold sweat. This time, she had truly only hurt her enemy 800 times but hurt herself by 1,000. There was nothing that could be done right now, she already pounced on him and could only keep going from there. Yi Wanwan laid on his chest like a neglected concubine and whined, "I've been here for so long but you don't even care. What's so good about watching this? You've been looking at this the whole time, is it better looking than I am? Who's better looking, me or this thing?" These were truly the words of a troublemaking beauty. The divider was able to block the visuals but not the sounds in the car. Lu Ying would probably be pissed to death when he heard that. It was almost as if she could hear the gritting of teeth from the front. In fact, Yi Wanwan was right. Lu Ying had already unsheathed the sword that he usually brought with him, this demonic woman. Even the words he bellowed were exactly the same as Yi Wanwan imagined. Su Yi quickly stopped him, lowered his voice and said nervously, "Keep it down. It's not your first day knowing about this, why are you still so rash? What if Master hears you? Do you want to die?" The teenager next to Su Yi was so mad that his hair was almost on fire. How could he swallow this down? This woman's been so weird lately, she obviously has bad intentions. Why is Master so blind, not putting his guard up against her? Su Yi hurriedly reassured him, "She's just a little silly girl, how much harm can she do? Don't worry." Lu Ying scoffed, "TSK, what can she do? She did that on purpose just now. She did it on purpose for me to see. She's driving a wedge between Ninth Master and me. What on earth do you mean by that? Don't make her sound like your love rival, alright? In any case, just stay calm. Even if she's a demon, do you think our master is a fool? What kind of person do you think he is?" Su Yi said. Hearing this, Lu Ying's anger slowly dissipated. After all, Si Han was a perfect god in his heart, how could he be a fool? However, the moment Su Yi finished speaking, the two of them heard the master's hoarse and low voice coming from the back, "You're better looking." Lu Ying, Su Yi, Yi Wanwan didn't stop there, probably because she saw that Si Han wasn't mad, so she gathered her courage again. Yi Wanwan shot a look towards the front of the car and continued questioning Si Han, "Then what if one day Lu Ying and I fell into a river, who would you save first?" Lu Ying, Su Yi, Yua. What kind of question was that? I've got to kowtow to Yi Wanwan for her courage. I didn't think this woman would be scarier when she's submissive to the master than when she's disobedient and causing trouble. The atmosphere was stagnant. After some silence, the man's voice finally traveled to the front, "Save you. Lu Ying, where's my knife?" Su Yi. At this moment, Lu Ying's expression was akin to a whiny wife and Su Yi could almost see the black cloud of resentment emanating from the top of his head. Afraid that Lu Ying would lose control and butcher Yi Wanwan, Su Yi persuaded him urgently, "Lu Ying, put your knife down, please calm down. The master still loves you. Master said that purely because you can swim and don't need his help at all. Let's not stoop to the level of that little demon. We must have dignity. Have some dignity." Su Yi was busy trying to talk him out of it but suddenly, he realized that his tone was a little weird, like he's persuading a jealous lover. Chapter 172, I'm just pure and innocent he. Upon hearing Si Han choosing her without any hesitation, Yi Wanwan felt appeased and satisfied. Si Han grabbed her waist to prevent her from falling and spoke softly into her ear, "Are you done messing around? Did I just get caught for making trouble?" Yi Wanwan whined meekly, "Who asked Lu Ying to look at me like I'm a troublemaking vixen? I'm so pure and innocent, pure and innocent." Si Han's gaze swept over her. Did she just say she's pure and innocent? Yi Wanwan coughed lightly, feeling slightly abashed. She then pouted, "He doesn't like me, I hate him." "Don't provoke him," a tinge of warning lingered in Si Han's tone. Yi Wanwan gave a pained expression, "You're being totally biased." Si Han slowly looked at her with his cold eyes, "I am, in fact, biased." Yi Wanwan, fine, Fine, I'll admit that Si Han already gave me face and has been very giving to me. Anyway, it's an eye for an eye. If he glares at me again, I'm going to hurt his master. To anger him to death. Yi Wanwan said. Si Han, as Lu Ying's master, Si Han never expected to get dragged into Lu Ying's troubles for just being an innocent bystander. Should I give Lu Ying a raise then? Shortly, the car arrived at the old house. When they got out, Yi Wanwan met Lu Ying's gaze. As expected, his eyes were filled with a cold, murderous intent. Yi Wanwan knew that a feud had been forged today. But so what? There's a perfect gem, Qin Ruoxi, in front of him anyway, so no matter what I do, that guy will never like me. I'm a troublemaker and a pampered princess, so what? In her previous life, she was most afraid of Si Han. But aside from him, she was also terrified of these two killing machines by his side. Each time he looked at her with his icy glare, she felt as if her flesh was being sliced into. She was also warned and threatened every 2 to 3 days and was surrounded by guards like she was a thief. Even after being in Jin Garden for so many years, even when Si Han gave her the best of everything, she never felt like she belonged. All the wrongs she'd suffered quietly all those years, she had to get revenge for all of them in this life. Since I can't go back to being an innocent teenager anymore, what's the harm in acting like a demon this time around? After they entered, the old lady saw that both Yi Wanwan and Si Han had arrived and a big smile spread across her face. You're back. Si Han, Amichem. The old lady looked at her precious grandson grumpily, then pulled Yi Wanwan to her warmly. Wanwan, come over quickly. Let Grandma take a look at you. Grandma. Yi Wanwan called out to her sweetly. It was no wonder that the old lady had a good impression of her, other than the fact that she didn't make any mistakes this time around. Yi Wanwan's look was very pleasing, both her appearance and temperament were very likable. She looked very gentle and obedient, simple and innocent, inciting people to let their guard down instinctively and dote on her. Not bad, thankfully you didn't become skinnier, it looks like you've gained some weight. You're still too skinny, you have to eat more. The old madam pulled her in and scanned her up and down, nodding approvingly. Yi Wanwan was really too skinny before, like she could be blown away by the wind. Recently, she managed to get some nourishment, but as a whole, she was still a little skinny. But with her appetite now, there was no doubt that she'd be fattened up in no time. Also, if she kept binging, she might even return to being as fat as before. Got it, Grandma. I'll eat more. Good girl. Oh, right, Grandma almost forgot. Wanwan, come, Grandma wants you to meet someone. The old madam brought her into the house with a wide smile on her face. Chapter 173, Finally, they meet again. She wants me to meet someone. Someone whom the old madam wants to introduce me to specifically. Who could it be? Yi Wanwan stayed by the old madam's side with a look of suspicion. They walked past the living room and entered the lawn. Suddenly, a familiar figure appeared before her eyes without warning. All she saw was in front of a few precious peony trees, stood a tall and slender silhouette. The girl had curly chestnut-colored hair. She wore a casual camel coat and didn't look very stunning, yet was elegant and graceful. Every movement revealed grandeur and classiness that only a true aristocrat could exude. Even with the girl's elegance, the grimness between her brows matched up to a man's. This was Imperial City's #1 goddess Qin Ruoxi. She finally got to meet her again after such a long time following her rebirth. The moment Yi Wanwan saw who it was, her pupils constricted and her instincts heightened her vigilance and guard as if she saw her archenemy. Wanwan, this is my grandniece, Qin Ruoxi. She's little 9th's good friend as well. The old madam introduced her with an incredible pride and arrogance. Yi Wanwan's brain managed to cool down slightly as countless memories came flooding back. Si Han's late grandfather had a sworn brother called Qin Bing Song. Qin Ruoxi was Qin Bing Song's granddaughter. Qin Ruoxi wasn't simply little 9th's friend, like how the old madam described. She was Si Yihan's right-hand person, someone at his side who was irreplaceable. Whether in the company, family or secret service, Qin Ruoxi was very highly regarded. Almost everyone saw her as the future mistress of the household. However, the person whom Si Yihan wanted to marry previously was Yi Wanwan, not Qin Ruoxi. Although Si Yihan was scary, women were still attracted to him since he was gentle at times. She was quite moved when he ignored all the objections to marry her and gave her the status of Mrs. C. In her previous life, she thought about the marriage deeply. Since she couldn't change anything, she thought she should just compromise and live with the title. But the reality of it made her heart grow bitterly cold, over and over again. Judging by Qin Ruoxi's abilities, she wouldn't hurt her directly because these lowly methods would only anger Si Yihan. She only needed to speak a few words and there would be numerous people willing to get their hands dirty for her. Lu Ying was one of those people. Moreover, the mere presence of this woman was enough to force her into the corner and steal her thunder. To Yi Wanwan, it wasn't the physical torture that was the scariest, but the psychological torture. If Si Yihan took away her freedom, this woman destroyed her personality and sense of self to the point that even if she occupied the glorified seat of Mrs. C, she lived like a canary, a puppet without any beliefs of her own. Yi Wanwan quickly suppressed the surging current beneath her eyes and greeted her like normal. "Nice to meet you, Miss Qin." The corners of Qin Ruoxi's lips curled upwards like it was the perfect timing. "Call me Ruoxi." "So you're the Wanwan who Grandma's been talking about. You're just as pretty as she described. Yihan's really lucky. This is the first time we're meeting, so here's a little gift." Following that, a servant brought a delicate little box over. It was a pair of jade bracelets. Crystal clear, full-colored, glass jade. The current market price for this was about 8 million and its appreciation would be quite considerable in the future. She clearly knew that Yi Wanwan was Si Yihan's girlfriend and Si Yihan had even brought her to meet Grandma already. There was no way Qin Ruoxi didn't understand the meaning of all this. However, her attitude from the beginning didn't show an ounce of jealousy at all. This should be the kind of tolerance that a real wife must have. Chapter 174, Embrace the Golden Thigh. "Thank you, Ruoxi. The bangle is beautiful." Yi Wanwan closed the box and acted like she didn't understand the value of it. "As long as you like it." After Qin Ruoxi was done with her, she turned to Si Yihan. When she looked at Si Yihan, her initial formal and cold attitude was suddenly much warmer and her gaze turned gentler as well. "Yihan, I've settled the issue over at Shin City. I'll talk over the details with you tonight." "Thanks," Si Yihan said indifferently, as he retracted his gaze from Yi Wanwan. Yi Wanwan's expression was strange when she looked at Qin Ruoxi just now. "Are you just saying that, or are you really grateful?" Qin Ruoxi raised her brows. Si Yihan glanced at Su Yi and he immediately brought out what he'd prepared beforehand, a bottle of exquisite wine. Qin Ruoxi's eyes lit up when she saw it, the liquor that seventh brother fermented himself. "I tried bargaining for it with an ancient medical scroll that was out of print and he refused." "How'd you get it?" "Su Yi got it." "You bullied Su Yi again, always getting him to do these challenging tasks." Yi Wanwan stood silently next to Si Yihan and watched as the two of them chatted away happily, closed off from all other people, including herself. At this moment, Lu Ying's excited voice came from the door. "Ms. Ruoxi. When did you arrive?" Lu Ying's eyes brightened the moment he saw Qin Ruoxi, like his pillar of support had arrived. Qin Ruoxi smiled. "Not too long ago. I heard that you've recently learned a boxing skill. Can you practice with me?" "Sure." Lu Ying nodded instantly. This mischievous monkey, finding someone to spar with the moment she's back. Not womanly at all. The old madam complained with an annoyed expression, but it was obvious that her loving tone held no blame at all. The old madam must be disappointed with Si Yihan's choice to choose me, a girl who appeared out of nowhere, instead of Qin Ruoxi. But it was better for Si Yihan to be attached to someone, whoever it was, good or bad, over being single for years without being close to any woman at all. The old madam headed back to the kitchen. Yi Wanwan followed Si Han and sat down near the wooden table under the pergola. Qin Ruoshi had removed her coat and started sparring with Lu Ying. Yi Wanwan slumped down on her chair and watched the reckless and confident figures of the two sparring. During this first meeting, Qin Ruoshi had given her a show of her strength. From Si Han to the old madam, to Su Yi and Lu Ying, she was showing her sovereignty and letting Yi Wanwan know that there was no place for her by Si Han's side. It was like that in her previous life as well. Qin Ruoshi didn't do any real harm to her but forced her to feel despair. In Si Han's world, she'd been all alone, isolated and without help. However, it was also because she was too foolish in her previous life. So what if Qin Ruoshi bribed everyone around Si Han? Yi Wanwan only needed to grab hold of one person and she'd be invincible. Yi Wanwan propped her chin on her hand, looked at the golden thigh glistening next to her and murmured softly, Si Han, I want to eat some melon seeds. Si Han felt something was amiss about Yi Wanwan just now, but before he could figure it out, it was gone. He had started to size her up, but once he saw her acting coquettishly with her beautiful little face and a sweet smile, that nagging feeling seemed to just be his misperception. Yi Wanwan shook his arm, my arm hurts from all the homework I've done recently, could you peel them for me please Yi? Chapter 175, Please feed me. People who practice martial arts have pretty good hearing and Lu Ying was no exception. Although he was sparring with Qin Ruoshi, he heard Yi Wanwan's words loud and clear. His moves suddenly messed up, and the anger that he'd suppressed previously finally boiled over. How dare she? She actually wants the master to do something like that? Qin Ruoshi stopped him without batting an eyelid. Lu Ying, don't be rash. Lu Ying said angrily, Ms. Ruoshi, even you are trying to stop me? I've had enough today. How could you not be angry at all? Qin Ruoshi looked distant and replied calmly, with Yi Han's status, it's perfectly normal for him to have a few women by his side. Boo. But this woman is different. Lu Ying rebutted anxiously. Qin Ruoshi's expression turned cold when she heard him, but she quickly regained her calmness. How is she different? Lu Ying, remember this, she's not different at all, you don't have to take so much offense. Lu Ying wanted to speak but kept silent in the end, though his heart wasn't entirely at peace. How is she normal? The master actually peeled melon seeds for her, he peeled 78 of them. How could his delicate hands be used to peel melon seeds? Most importantly, there has never been a woman by master's side but this good-for-nothing, immoral and trouble-causing woman was able to stay by his side for 2 whole years. At first, he didn't care about this woman at all and only acted like the master found a playmate out of boredom. Who knew that the master would actually bring her to meet the old madam? The only person qualified enough for the master to introduce to the old madam was the future headmistress of the household. Why did the master bring this kind of woman to meet the old madam? Lu Ying was on the verge of exploding, but on the other side, Yi Wanwan was watching as Si Han peeled the melon seeds for her, one by one. Those slender fingers forced open each melon seed swiftly and the kernels fell into an exquisite little white porcelain bowl. As he peeled more and more, he looked more and more tempting. It couldn't be helped, heaven can be so unfair sometimes. Some people can look so stunning just by peeling melon seeds. Although she had no choice but to use him to survive, Yi Wanwan also felt that she was enjoying herself. With this thought, everything seemed balanced. Sensing her stare, Si Han stopped what he was doing and lifted his head. He was met with the searing gaze of the girl. Her pupils were glistening with, "Please feed me," written all over them. After seeing her fearful, indifferent, hateful expressions and considering the way she had shunned him for so long, her current expression was too moving and it tempted him. Yi Wanwan was staring at the hands peeling the melon seeds at first, but when she noticed that they stopped moving, she looked up, unsatisfied. Why did he stop? There's not enough yet. Without waiting for Yi Wanwan to speak, a shadow was cast over her head and his thin lips slowly landed on hers with a tinge of warmth. Yi Wanwan's eyes were wide open. She blinked and blinked, unsure what just happened. At this moment, he said in a low voice with his lips close to hers, "Who allowed you to look at me this way, Yi Wan? What did I do? What's wrong with my gaze? I just wanted to have some melon seeds, that's all." Chapter 176, Captivated by Your Sex Appeal. In the next second, a bang resounded not far away. Yi Wan saw the cracks in the wall next to Lu Ying clearly. He clenched his fist tightly and glared in Yi Wan's direction. Then, without regard to Qin Ruoxi's reaction, he turned on his heels and walked away. He just left in a huff. Yi Wan, actually, all she really wanted was to eat some melon seeds. Speaking of which, it was no wonder that Qin Ruoxi was able to reach her lofty position in the family. Even after witnessing Si Yihan getting intimate with her, she still maintained her composure and was consoling Lu Ying instead. This kind of woman who was beautiful both inside and out, who was skilled in using both the pen and the rifle and wasn't easily jealous, was simply perfect. Even she thought that Si Yihan was blind, not to mention his henchmen and followers. Then she felt a sharp pain on her lips and Yi Wan changed her line of thought. "Ouch, what were you thinking about?" The man asked unhappily when he noticed that she was distracted. "Do you even need to ask? Your little Lu Ying was so mad that he nearly crushed a wall, didn't you see?" Yi Wan sighed silently in her heart and muttered, "I'm thinking whether there's something wrong with your taste in women." Si Yihan narrowed his eyes and replied casually, "Tell me, what's wrong?" Yi Wan thought about it, plucked up her courage and replied, "Why don't you pick a woman who's beautiful both inside and out, skilled in using both the pen and the rifle, graceful in the hall and skilled in the kitchen? Instead, you chose a troublemaker who doesn't follow the rules and causes chaos." When Si Yihan heard that, he looked deeply at her. Just as Yi Wan's heart was getting petrified by his stare, she finally heard his casual reply with just 5 words, "Captivated by your sex appeal." Yi Wan almost choked. This doesn't seem characteristic of a ruler, right? Who said I'm a ruler?" Yi Wan was speechless. During dinner, Si Yihan was silent as usual. Qin Ruoxi chatted away with the old madam about some funny incidents and made her laugh as if nothing had happened. It was obvious that Qin Ruoxi was aware of the old madam's importance. Yi Wan knew very well that the fondness the old madam had for her was only on a surface level. The moment Qin Ruoxi returned, the good impression that she had with the old madam previously had dissipated. She was already prepared for this. Qin Ruoxi's place in the Si family was deep-rooted, it wasn't something that she was able to shake in a short period of time. After dinner, Yi Wan took out her homework and started working on the desk. Si Yihan had a document in his hands and flipped through it on the sofa nearby. There was a knock on the door and Qin Ruoxi walked in, probably to report about work. "Yihan, about Shin City," Qin Ruoxi was about to continue when she glanced at Yi Wan doing her homework. It was obvious with such confidential matters that Yi Wan should leave. Yi Wan was about to pack up and leave when Si Yihan placed the document down and looked up. Then he turned to Qin Ruoxi and said one word, "Sit." He didn't intend for Yi Wan to leave at all. Yi Wan slowly raised her head and looked towards the 2 people sitting opposite, her heart beating faster. Actually, she wished that Si Yihan would allow her to leave. She didn't want to know anything about these confidential matters. Chapter 177, The Way a Fatuous Ruler Acts. However, just like before, Si Yihan didn't hide anything from her. Such confidential and even top-secret things, his bedroom, his most important study and his darkroom, were all brazenly spread out in front of her. But she could understand why. Would anybody be guarded against their own pet cat, dog or bird? Obviously not. Qin Ruoxi glanced at Yi Wan, was silent for a moment and in the end, didn't say anything at all. Then she started reporting the details to Si Yihan. In the quiet study, there was only the clear voice of Qin Ruoxi and a few words from Si Yihan occasionally. Yi Wan left those 2 alone and started doing her homework. With her math homework piled up like a mountain, she didn't have time to think about anything else. Suddenly, a loud dong interrupted the silence. Qin Ruoxi and Si Yihan raised their heads and looked towards Yi Wanwan. They saw that Yi Wanwan's head was on the table, with a worksheet sandwiched in between. She stared at that math worksheet with red and teary eyes, looking as if the paper had murdered her dad. After a moment of strange silence, Si Yihan pinched his brows and indicated for Qin Ruoxi to stop. He stood up and walked towards Yi Wanwan. Si Yihan walked to her side. Which question? Yi Wanwan was stunned as she forced her head up. Huh? Which question do you need help with? Si Yihan repeated and at the same time, stretched his fingers out and stroked her forehead with a frown. Yi Wanwan tilted her head and replied instinctively, Question 1, Question 2, Question 3, Question 4, Question 5, Question 6, Si Yihan took out the first aid kit from the cupboard, applied some medicine on her red and swollen forehead, then started explaining the questions to her. Upon seeing Si Yihan helping her with her homework, Yi Wanwan was dazed and somewhat surprised, but was captivated by Si Yihan's explanation very quickly. After 10 minutes, Yi Wanwan looked at Si Yihan with dazzling eyes, as if he had grown a pair of little white wings on his back. She never expected that after he explained those inexplicable formulas and questions that they'd become surprisingly easy. Very soon, half an hour passed. Qin Ruoxi, who was sitting on the sofa waiting in silence, finally spoke up. Yihan. Si Yihan lifted his gaze from the paper and looked at Qin Ruoxi. You can head back first. Qin Ruoxi, who'd kept her composure all this while, had an uneasiness that appeared beneath her eyes after she heard him. But the issue with Shin City, we have to, I know what to do. Qin Ruoxi's expression turned gloomy at being interrupted. After a few seconds, she finally stood up. Got it. Qin Ruoxi left after she packed up her documents. Watching Qin Ruoxi leave, Yi Wanwan was quite surprised herself. What Qin Ruoxi said just now must have been very important. In fact, everything handled by Qin Ruoxi was important. But Si Yihan actually pushed this issue back just to help her with her homework. This was truly the way a fatuous ruler acts. When he noticed that she was distracted, Si Yihan rapped his fist on the table. Do you understand? Ah. No. No. Can you explain it again, please? Yi Wanwan quickly focused all her attention. Forget it, who cares what Si Yihan thinks? I'm still stressed over math. With such a rare opportunity today, I have to grab hold of it. Chapter 178, His master couldn't be horny, could he? Downstairs, Luing crossed his arms and leaned against the door to the courtyard. He was still mad, but after he heard familiar footsteps behind him, he turned around, surprised. Ms. Ruoxi? Weren't you speaking to the master? You're already done. Qin Ruoxi's expression was hard to decipher and she shook her head. Not yet. Yihan's busy, so he asked me to head back first. The master's busy. Did something happen? Luing probed anxiously. If it was more important than the issue at Shin City, then it must be something big. Qin Ruoxi hurriedly replied, No, don't worry. Then what's the master busy with? We exterminated all the remaining forces in Shin City, everything's a mess and we're all awaiting his instructions. Seeing that Qin Ruoxi was hesitant in replying, Luing could guess what happened and he bellowed furiously, was it that vixen again? Ms. Ruoxi. You understand now. The master pushed aside such an important thing just for her. Also, in the car today, while the master was having a video conference, this woman shamelessly seduced him right in front of Su-yi and me. Most importantly, the master didn't scold her and even stopped the meeting for her. The image of Si Yihan tutoring that woman appeared in her head and a darkness flashed across Qin Ruoxi's eyes. Yihan's a guy and this Ms. Ye's young and beautiful, it's normal for him to be captivated by her. Anyway, it doesn't matter now. Nobody's able to influence him when it comes to the big issues. Ms. Ruoxi, the master's already been influenced, alright? At a time like this, you're still speaking up for him. Luing was furious. Even if Qin Ruoshi's words make sense, they only apply to normal men. How could Master be as horny as those ordinary people? This is impossible. Qin Ruoshi looked at the teenager next to her helplessly. You get aggravated too easily. You can't be like that from now on. You should be wary that she might come between you and Si Han. For now, don't be so bothered by her. Lu Ying was indignant. I can't take it much longer. Other than a pretty face, that woman's useless, extremely stupid and doesn't even have the strength to handle a chicken. If this keeps up, even if she doesn't cause any trouble, she'll drag the master down sooner or later. She's not comparable to you at all, Ms. Ruoshi. Qin Ruoshi furrowed her brows and warned him sternly, Lu Ying, don't say these things in the future. She's one of Yi Han's people after all. Lu Ying's face darkened. She's not fit to be one of the master's people. This kind of person isn't even qualified to be on par with you. Upstairs, after Yi Wanwan finally grasped Si Han's methods, it was as if she found a treasure cove. Unknowingly, she had listened to Si Han's explanations for an entire night. Then, Jiang Yanran called. It's nearly midnight. Jiang Yanran should be asleep by now. Why would she call at this hour? Yi Wanwan anxiously answered the call. Jiang Yanran's cries came through the receiver. Yi Wanwan's face changed. Yanran? Are you crying? What happened? Wanwan. What should I do? I suddenly realized. I'm so useless. Why after seeing what kind of person he is? I'm still suffering. It's too hard to bear. Jiang Yanran sobbed intermittently and she sounded drunk as well. Yi Wanwan heaved a sigh of relief. You've been drinking? She thought that scumbag's song had caused trouble again. Chapter 179, becomes so strong that she could be his rival. Yup, I'm already 18, I'm allowed to drink, Jiang Yanran replied meekly like she was afraid that Yi Wanwan would scold her. Where are you right now? Yi Wanwan asked, concerned. By the lake, the little lake in school. Yup, Yi Wanwan's head started to hurt. You're so tipsy now, you might fall into the lake by accident. Hurry and head back to the dorms. What an honest kid, I just casually warned her to help her calm down but she's actually listening to me. But I'm lost, Yi Wanwan. Oh, Big Missy, how could you get lost in your own school? Forget it, find somewhere and stay there, I'll get someone to fetch you. Yi Wanwan warned Jiang Yanran repeatedly, then gave Chu Feng a call, asking him to go to the little lake to look for Jiang Yanran before hanging up. After the call, Yi Wanwan turned to Si Han and said, that was Yanran, the new roommate I told you about before. She got drunk in school and now can't find her way back to the dorms, so I asked a boy from the neighboring school to find her. That guy has a crush on Jiang Yanran, he seems quite nice. The Si Han in her past life was extremely controlling, almost to the point where it was perverted. He investigated everybody around her. Even if his intention was to keep her safe, his behavior was still revolting to her. In her past life, the only way she tried to resist was to try to escape, but this time, she thought that if she became strong enough to protect herself, and even become Si Han's rival, maybe she could regain her freedom that way. Although the latter was still a fantasy for her at the moment. Yi Wanwan continued, it's so late already, I've got to go back. Though tomorrow's a weekend, our class has a rehearsal tomorrow morning, so I have to rush back. I'm also worried about Yanran being alone in the dorm. You should hurry and talk business with Ms. Ruoshi. Even though Si Han looked indifferent as usual and didn't say a word in response, Yi Wanwan could sense that he was unhappy. She really felt that Si Han's thoughts were harder to decipher than a woman's. Before, when she was messing around and making a scene over and over to provoke Lu Ying on purpose, he wasn't mad at all. But now when she's being sensible and caring for her friend, he's upset. Where's the logic? Fortunately, Si Han relented in the end and got Su Yi to send her back. As it was pretty late, the old madam was already asleep, so Yi Wanwan didn't want to disturb her and only informed the old housekeeper of her departure. In the living room, Qin Ruoshi was up waiting and hadn't gone to bed. When she saw Yi Wanwan coming downstairs to say goodbye, she was surprised. "Ms. Yi, you're leaving? It's so late, why don't you stay over and sleep here?" Lu Ying, who was off to the side, scoffed, "How is she qualified to stay in the old house?" Lu Ying hadn't finished his sentence but was forced to retreat by an icy glare shot at him. He shut his mouth in an instant. That glare seemed like nothing, but it was as if it brought an immense power, like a huge, heavy mountain had suddenly pressed down on his chest. Lu Ying hung his head low and his back broke out in a cold sweat. But after the scare, he became even more furious. After Yi Wanwan and Su Yi left, Si Yihan turned to the teenager. "Lu Ying, come over." Lu Ying clenched his fists. "Yes." Qin Ruoshi turned to the both of them, worried. "Yihan, don't blame Lu Ying, he didn't mean it, you know how he's like. Ms. Ruoshi, you don't have to speak up for me." Lu Ying followed Si Yihan into the study without a word. Chapter 180, Unparalleled. The study was dead silent. Si Yihan sat on the wide and simple antique chair and looked at the teenager standing upright in the middle of the living room. Lu Ying's face was filled with stubbornness and discontentment, like a wild and unruly wolf cub. There was only one way to tame a person like him, and that was to be stronger than him. Otherwise, he'd never submit to you to his death. After some time, Si Yihan finally spoke. "You have something to say about my taste in women?" Lu Ying's eyes widened the moment he heard that question. "Of course I do." "I wouldn't dare," he mumbled. "You wouldn't dare." Si Yihan's low voice brought a great sense of oppression. The teenager gritted his teeth. After holding back for so long, he couldn't take it any longer. "Actually, I do have an opinion. Master, I don't understand why you'd choose a woman like Yi Wanwan. Then in your mind, what kind of woman do you think I should choose?" Si Yihan asked in reply. Lu Ying answered without hesitation, "Of course someone who's beautiful both inside and out, and knowledgeable and skilled in martial arts. Only then would she be compatible with you. How could you be with a useless bum who needs your protection all the time and could bring you down anytime? I don't believe you're just one of those worldly men who only care about appearances." Being at his master's side for so long, he knew clearly how harsh his master's standards were. Everybody believed he didn't want to be close to women, but it was because ordinary women were unattractive to him and they were essentially from different planets. Furthermore, this person had to become his life partner. Beautiful both inside and out, knowledgeable and skilled in martial arts, Si Yihan paused and looked at the teenager. "You mean I should marry you and Su Yi?" "Lu Ying." The moment Si Yihan said that, Lu Ying's brain crashed instantly and he was dumbfounded. Following that, his ears and neck were red as he contested, "How's that possible? What I meant was, although Su Yi was in charge of the internal matters while he was in charge of the external ones, and he was a good fighter whereas Su Yi was very knowledgeable, and the two of them together did fit his criteria, he didn't mean it that way." Master's obviously taking it out of context. "Who told you that my partner needs to have just these two criteria?" Si Yihan asked softly. His icy cold gaze appeared as if he despised every living creature in the world. Immediately, Lu Ying sought his opinion earnestly. "Then, master, what do you think she should be like?" He had never heard his own master mention his criteria for a spouse, so naturally, he was very eager to find out. Lu Ying held his breath and fixed his eyes on Si Yihan, awaiting his reply. After a long time, his low and hoarse voice filled the quiet air. "Unparalleled." Lu Ying, he knew how high his master's standards were but never expected them to be that high. What does unparalleled even mean? Looks, brains and skills aren't enough. He needs someone to be extraordinary and omnipotent. After the initial shock, he was still speechless. "Master, are you serious? That dumb wretch, who can't even kill a chicken and hasn't graduated from high school, is considered unparalleled? Even Ms. Ruoshi can't match the meaning of this one word." The moment Su Yi returned from sending Yi Wanwan home, he saw a mushroom cloud forming on Lu Ying's head as he squatted by the foot of the wall. He sighed helplessly and walked over. got scolded, didn't you? Su-yi, do you know the master's criteria for his spouse? Lu-ying asked Su-yi. Su-yi paused, I'm not sure, but it should be something quite perverted, right? Lu-ying, master told me just now, he said one word. Which word was it? Su-yi was intrigued. Un-pa-ra-leld. Lu-ying mouthed each syllable in exaggeration. Su-yi, how could that stupid and weak girl bear the meaning of this word? Lu-ying exploded again. Su-yi wiped his sweat awkwardly, probably because beauty lies in the eyes of the beholder. Chapter 181, Come at me 100 more times. By the little lake at school, after Chu Feng hadn't returned her call for a while, Yi Wanwan decided to go down to the lake herself. As she approached the lake, she heard a dispute in the vicinity. Yen Ran, I've learned from my mistakes. I swear I'll treat you nicely from now on and we can get married after we graduate. Get lost. I've said it before, don't show your face in front of me. Gross. Yen Ran, swear with your heart and tell me that you weren't with this bastard to provoke me? Do you dare to say that you don't like me even a bit? Yen Ran, stop lying to yourself. Why are you with a person you don't like just for revenge? You don't like him at all, the person you like is me. Song Ziheng kept pestering Jiang Yen Ran while she was drunk and exhausted, and Chu Feng next to her had his fists clenched as he stared at Song Ziheng. But because he was in no position to speak at present, he didn't refute at all. Seeing that Chu Feng didn't fight back, Song Ziheng happily added, I've known Yen Ran from the moment we were born, she's liked me for 18 years. Who do you think you are? You think Yen Ran would fall for a gigolo like you? Stop dreaming. Yi Wanwan watched these three people from afar and let out a soft sigh. Jiang Yen Ran was still too soft-hearted and thin-skinned, unlike Song Ziheng, who was still shamelessly insisting that Jiang Yen Ran's value for friendship were in fact residual feelings for him. And with Jiang Yen Ran's character, even if she had feelings towards Chu Feng, she'd never say it out loud. Yi Wanwan looked around and picked up a small stone. She wrapped her palm around it, then flung it hard towards Chu Feng's calves. Chu Feng stood there, battered out of his senses. Then, a sharp pain suddenly arose from his calves as he staggered in a sorry plight. Chu Feng. Jiang Yen Ran noticed and woke up instantly. She quickly rushed over to Chu Feng's side and asked, Are you all right? Yen Ran, I'm fine, Song Ziheng. You've gone too far. Jiang Yen Ran was in a fiery rage. Song Ziheng furrowed his brows, What did I do? I didn't do anything. This guy's faking it. You're still denying it. It was dark and only the three of them were there. Also, Song Ziheng often bullied others because he was slightly more talented than they were. Who could it have been other than him? Who said I ended up with this guy just to provoke you? Who said that I still like you? Who said that I don't like him? Jiang Yen Ran suddenly pulled Chu Feng's neck, looked at his lips and kissed down, Have you taken a good look? Seeing that Jiang Yen Ran actually kissed Chu Feng right in front of him, Song Ziheng's face turned green instantly. Jiang Yen Ran. You. As for Chu Feng, he was like a steam train, almost ready to charge out from his motherland into the world. My leg hurts so bad. Which immortal Jia one, hit me. Come at me 100 more times, please. Yi Wanwan yawned and stopped watching. She retreated to her dorm without a sound. She knew that Jiang Yen Ran would never forgive Song Ziheng. But, since Ziheng now viewed her as his one and only lifesaver, he definitely wouldn't let her go. With her soft-hearted nature, if she wasn't more harsh with him, she'd be harassed for a very long time. Good thing I was here to end this once and for all. Now, she'd finally settled this issue at Jiang Yen Ran's side. That's one issue done and over with. Chapter 182. I'm waiting for you. As Yi Wan passed a small forest on her way back to the dormitory, a figure suddenly appeared out of nowhere, almost scaring her to death. Her first reaction was to touch her face. Luckily, she'd been very careful this time. Even though it was already late at night, she made sure to put on a slab of makeup like she was about to act for a horror movie in order to prevent an incident similar to the one with Si Xia from happening again. She was safe. When that person noticed her, it was evident that he was in a greater shock than she was. She heard the person's gasp very clearly. She took a few steps forward. Under the glow from the street lamps, Yi Wan managed to see the other person's face. Si Xia. What's this guy doing out here in the middle of the night? After the ultimate move she'd made previously, this guy kept his distance from her, and because he was also quite busy himself, they didn't even speak much these past few days. She'd forgotten all about this bomb, and pushed it to the back of her mind. Why aren't you asleep yet? Yi Wan casually asked. I was thinking about you so I couldn't fall asleep. Yi Wan was speechless. Wan, the low voice of the teenager traveled to her ears. Huh? What? Yi Wan regained her senses. Why aren't you asleep? Were you waiting for me? He asked. His pupils reflected the moonlight seeping through the gaps of the leaves, like a demon who could trick people off the righteous path. Yi Wan. He stopped bothering me for only a few days. Why's he back at it again? Does he think my life is too long and boring? Yi Wan strongly felt that this couldn't go on anymore. She had to find a way to get rid of him once and for all. After she took a deep breath, Yi Wan forced herself to calm down. After that, she replied slowly, Yup, I was waiting for you. His eyes lit up instantly with a little suspicion and disbelief. Really? Yi Wan faked a look of honesty without a trace of deception. Of course. I knew you went to work, so I waited here especially for you. With that, Yi Wan looked down shyly and hooked her fingers nervously. Well. Si Xia, actually, I've liked you for quite some time. Si Xia was stunned. He totally didn't expect the sudden confession from her. What? TSK, now he knows how scary it is to be confessed to. Yi Wan concealed the mischievousness beneath her eyes, plucked up her courage and continued, I like you too. Yi Wan spoke while taking a step closer to him. I fell for you from the first time I laid eyes on you, but I never held on to any hope that I'd have any chance to be with you. I really didn't expect that I'd be so lucky to be your desk mate and even get the chance to act in the play with you. You don't even know how happy I was. Si Xia became even more surprised. I thought, you wouldn't part with Si Yihan unless heaven and earth collided. Yi Wan smiled bitterly. Of course I was lying to you. Yi Wan spoke and suddenly raised her head excitedly to look at Si Xia, but I didn't expect that. Si Xia, you would actually. Are you, really in love with me? Or, were you just fooling with me? Si Xia's constant, calm gaze finally showed some hesitation. He paused for a long time before replying, to me, you're very special, unlike the other girls. Not just because of your appearance. Yi Wan's eyes glistened and burned intensely. Well then, let's complete the greatest harmony of our lives tonight. What? Si Xia was stunned. Yi Wan acted very excited. Her face was flushed and she was extremely emotional. Taking this chance when Si Xia was paralyzed on the spot, she suddenly pounced on him with all her strength. The two of them fell and rolled into the nearby bush. Wan, you, wait, Si Xia was about to get up but was immediately pushed down by Yi Wan. What's wrong? Don't you like me? I like you too. I like you so much, don't you want to be with me? Si Xia retreated. No, you need to calm down a little. Look at how beautiful the night is tonight. We don't have to wait for another day. How could Yi Wan calm down? She stretched her arms out and started to unfasten the buttons on his clothes as she puckered her lips and prepared to kiss. He watched as his collar was grabbed and sat in shock, looking at the face worse than a horror film looming before him like it was about to engulf him in the next second. Suddenly, with a great force, he broke away from her and at the same time, shouted angrily, "Get lost." Chapter 183, trampled on. After the angry shouts, there was a cold and dead silence. The love-struck expression on Yuanwan's face subsided like the tide as she regained a cold and indifferent expression. Yuanwan tidied the edges of her white dress, stood up slowly and looked coldly at the battered and exhausted teenager who had grass all over his body, his face filled with indignation and fear. "Hey Xia, are you done acting?" He lifted his head angrily and glared at her in disbelief. Yuanwan laughed. "Don't be dismayed, going to this extent with me looking the way I do, you're already quite good." With that, Yuanwan paused and the smile on her face was replaced by a seriousness. "I don't care what your motives were, nor do I care about what happened between you and Siyihan, just please don't drag me into it." Jia, don't have the energy to play games with you. You hear me? Yuanwan turned and left immediately. Behind her, Xia was a mess. While they were struggling, he rolled in the grass and mud and lost a few buttons on his shirt. He looked like he'd just been trampled on. After Yuanwan left, he regained his senses after a long time. He clenched his fists and muttered a curse. The night breeze was chilly and there was a cold glow from the moonlight overhead. He sat there in a daze. After some time, he slowly buried his head in his knees, his back trembled slightly and his fingers dug into the grass. "You're not," his voice was increasingly gloomy, "you're not my Jia. A moment of silence in the dead stillness. It was as if he'd drawn out all his anger. His voice that was gloomy and full of hatred became extremely weak. "My older sister would never do this to me." The next morning, Yuanwan was awoken by the screams of Jiang Yanran. All she saw was a girl sitting up in a panic, her flushed cheeks filled with distress. She seemed to have sobered up and recalled what she did last night. "You're awake." Yuanwan yawned. Jiang Yanran turned to her, looking as if she was about to cry as she spoke incoherently, "Wanwan. Last night, what happened to you last night?" Yuanwan acted like she didn't know anything. "Oh my god." Jiang Yanran held her face. Last night, I was in a bad mood so I drank a little. After that, I gave you a call, you told me to wait there, you said you'd get someone to fetch me." "That's right." "What's wrong?" "After that, Chu Feng came over and wanted to take me back to the dorms but Song Zihang somehow found me too and kept pestering me. He even insisted that I still had feelings for him and said I was using Chu Feng to get revenge and provoke him. He even hurt Chu Feng, then." Jiang Yanran blushed even more. "After that, I was so mad and to refute what Song Zihang said, I kissed Chu Feng right in front of him." Chapter 184, at worst, she'd get makeup remover splashed in her face. It was still early. The sky just had its first glimmer of light, the window frame was still moist with mist and dew, and the school grounds were empty. However, Jiang Yanran followed Yuanwan's gaze, looked over and saw a familiar figure below. A boy stood still below the girls' dormitory like a doorkeeper. And Jiang Yanran noticed that he was still wearing the same pajamas as last night. When Yuanwan called Chu Feng yesterday, he was already in bed and because he rushed over, he didn't even have time to get dressed. But it was already morning now and he was still in the same clothes. Could it be that he didn't go back and stood there for an entire night? With that thought, Jiang Yanran felt as if her heart had been struck by something. She turned around and ran downstairs. Yuanwan looked at Jiang Yanran's back and felt somewhat emotional as if her little girl was maturing to womanhood. Downstairs, Chu Feng, who was in a daze, suddenly saw Jiang Yanran running over and was stunned. His dashing face started to turn red and he suddenly didn't know what to do with his arms and legs. Yanran, you, Jiang Yanran wasn't sure what to say as she asked hesitantly, "You didn't sleep at all last night?" He scratched his head and didn't dare to lie, so he stood there like a child who'd misbehaved and answered honestly, I didn't dare to sleep, why not?" Jiang Yanran was perplexed. He pressed his lips together and was silent for a while before replying softly, I was afraid it was all a dream. I was afraid that once I woke up, although Chu Feng didn't manage to say those last few words, Jiang Yanran still understood what he meant. After all these years of chasing after Song Ziheng, she almost forgot that she was a girl, almost forgot how it felt to be treasured by someone. Even though Chu Feng was clumsy and maybe even a little foolish, he was genuine and made her feel safe. Jiang Yanran looked at him in silence, the darkness and confusion gradually leaving her eyes. While he stood around looking nervous and uneasy, she said to him, you should quickly go back and rest. She then took a few steps forward, tiptoed and planted a light kiss on his cheeks as she whispered, you're not dreaming. Oh, I'll go back then. Chu Feng blinked over and over, then stood up and walked away obediently, step by step. He's so calm and collected. Upstairs, Yi Wanwan saw everything that happened and sighed at this kid's progress. But in the next second, she noticed that Chu Feng was walking awkwardly with his left limbs extending out together and then his right. Yi Wanwan giggled as she rubbed her chin and looked a little envious. It's good to be young, you can fall in love so purely. After watching the lovey-dovey scene, Yi Wanwan laid in bed and went back to sleep. When she woke up, it was time to head to the small hall for rehearsals. Jiang Yanran had already showered and brought breakfast back. Knowing that Yi Wanwan had to go to rehearsal, she turned to her with a worried look and reminded her, Si Xia's personal guards are insane, especially with Qing Shue's complicated background. You better be careful. Speaking of Qing Shue, she was pretty aggressive. Just to get closer to Si Xia, she actually took over another girl's role as the evil stepmother. Yi Wanwan concentrated on eating her breakfast bun while speaking with her mouth full, don't worry, the worst that could happen is I'll get makeup remover splashed in my face, that's all. Jiang Yanran. Chapter 185, She's a beauty. At the small hall in school, the costumes and props were all prepared and everybody crowded around excitedly to take a look. Wow! The clothes are all so beautiful. They're so gorgeous. It's all thanks to Qing Shui. These costumes and props were borrowed from the professional production team with her help. When the time comes, our class performance will definitely be the most breathtaking. You're dreaming. No matter how stunning the costumes and props are, they'll never make up for Yi Wanwan's appalling face, alright? I really have nothing to say about this ugly freak. How could she be so shameless to take the role of Snow White and force Qing Shui to act as the evil queen? So what? There'll be no harm. Without any comparison, our little Shui will be the most beautiful queen in history for sure. At this moment, someone at the side raised her doubts. Hold on, even if there is some exaggeration in the theater, isn't Yi Wanwan's face a little overdone? Is it really okay for us to let her perform like that? Qing Shui's sidekicks glanced at Yi Wanwan and started complaining, that's right, even the costumes and props won't be able to save her. We have no choice but to change the script. Huh? Change the script? Change it in which way? Qing Shui replied, we can change the script to have Snow White's mother disguising Snow White with thick makeup from a young age in order to protect her. This way, Yi Wanwan wouldn't have to appear from beginning to end. Ha 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 ha, would this even work? Her little group of sidekicks scoffed, what else can we do? There will be so many important people at the show, we can't be the ones responsible for scaring them off. Everybody was talking about Yi Wanwan and occasionally, someone shot a look of disgust at her. Yi Wanwan played with her costume, held her chin up high and smiled while listening to their comments. Once they were almost done, she suddenly interrupted, Actually, I can appear on stage without any makeup on. I look pretty good without it. The air had a strange silence the moment everyone heard what she said. A moment later, a roar of laughter erupted. Ha 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 ha, what did this ugly freak just say? She actually said she looks pretty good without makeup on. Who exactly gave her the courage to say something like that? She must be joking. If she goes up on stage without any makeup, I think the audience would be scared to death. Is this a Snow White play or a midnight horror show? Yi Wanwan had a serious expression on. I look quite good without any makeup on. I've been making myself look like this because I'm afraid that my beauty would cause too much jealousy. Everybody's expression, we must be crazy. We're actually listening to this crazy and ugly freak talk nonsense. Yi Wanwan saw that nobody believed her, and she sighed helplessly. She told the truth today since she was in a good mood, but none of them actually believed her. Ugly freak. Stop with your unrealistic dreams and quickly get over here to rehearse. Also, put down that costume in your dirty hands. You're not allowed to change into it now, you can only change into it on the day of the performance. Would you be able to pay up if you dirty it now? Qing Shue's sidekick said, with her hands on her hips, glaring at her fiercely. After they changed the script, Yi Wanwan was basically switched from being Snow White to Cinderella. The so-called expensive costume was actually gray and old. It was made out of some unknown animal skin and it was ugly, stiff and difficult to put on. Yi Wanwan couldn't even be bothered to change into it, and when she heard what Qing Shue's sidekick said, she was overjoyed to toss it aside. Chapter 186. That unnerving stare. Qing Shue was already dressed in the queen's costume. Her makeup and costume made her small face seem even more delicate and beautiful. Other than the fangirls waiting for Si Xia by the side, there was also a big group of boys supporting the beauty queen, Qing Shue. At this moment, they all crowded around her like a myriad of stars surrounding the moon, praising her and taking photos of her. Qing Shue wasn't interested at all in these boys who were attempting to win her over. Instead, she kept looking in the direction of the entrance. When the person she'd been waiting for finally appeared, Qing Shue's eyes lit up instantly as she lifted her skirt up and walked over. Si Xia. You're here. She blushed a little and looked at him with a look of expectation. However, Si Xia didn't even glance at her dress that had aroused the attention of plenty of boys. His gaze scanned over everyone and landed straight on the girl behind the crowd, Yi Wanwan. Qing Shue followed Si Xia's gaze and looked towards Yi Wanwan. She gritted her teeth in anger. What's so good about that ugly freak that she deserves such special treatment from him? Si Xia, do I look good in this costume? Qing Shue tugged at his arm and twirled, trying to get his attention. But Si Xia didn't react. Qing Shue's face stiffened. Si Xia, what are you looking at? Si Xia seemed very distracted, like he'd sunk deep into his own world, but in Qing Shue's eyes, he seemed to be looking at Yi Wanwan in a daze. How could Qing Shue tolerate him ogling at another woman right in front of her? She raised her voice unhappily. Si Xia. Si Xia. Si Xia's distracted expression suddenly darkened, a chill seeping beneath his eyes. Shut up, you're being really noisy. Qing Shue's opened her eyes wide in shock. She couldn't believe that Si Xia would actually raise his voice at her with this attitude. You, Qing Shue's lips trembled as she pushed the crowd away and ran with red eyes. Little Shue. Little Shue. Qing Shue's sidekicks glanced at Si Xia, then glared at Yi Wanwan and hurriedly chased after Qing Shue. In a moment, the atmosphere in the hall froze. The girls who'd been so exhilarated when they saw Si Xia started retreating in fear. The hunk seems to be in a bad mood today. Even Qing Shue got on his bad side. We'd better stay far away. This was the first time they saw this expression on Si Xia, and it was terrifying. Si Xia didn't care about Qing Shue, who ran away in tears. He found a seat by the window and sat down in silence. As he leaned his chin on his hand, he continued staring at Yi Wanwan. As for Yi Wanwan, who was being stared at, she gritted her teeth and really wanted to charge over to that guy to pounce on him again. What's this little devil looking at? Is he trying to make me out to be some flower? I really didn't expect that after last night. Not only is he not stopping, he's even reached a whole new level. In the midst of the awkward atmosphere, everybody finally managed to coax Qing Shue back to rehearsal after a very long time. Until rehearsal started, Si Xia's eyes stayed on Yi Wanwan the whole time without even blinking. Wherever Yuan went, his eyes would follow like a newborn chick who wouldn't leave its mother. The way he looked at her was extremely obvious, only those who were blind wouldn't notice, but because of Xixia's terrifying rage just now, nobody dared to make a sound. They could only criticize him in their hearts. What exactly happened to you, hunk? Were you cursed by Yuan? Yuan shouldn't act as Snow White, she should be the witch instead. Chapter 187, Implicated. Even when she's lying in the coffin, the rehearsal ended with a weird atmosphere. Aside from staring at her, Xixia didn't do anything else, so Yuan didn't have a good excuse to flare up at him. Yuan finally got to the end of rehearsal, and just as she was about to run off, Xixia fainted onto the ground without any warning, right after they rehearsed the final kissing scene. Xixia, ah! God! Xixia has fainted. Someone get help. There were repeated screams and shouts. It was total chaos as everyone started crowding around Xixia. Yuan was dumbfounded and felt terribly guilty. What's up with this guy now? Yuan laid in the crystal coffin and glanced at Xixia through the gaps in the crowd. She saw that he was pale, curled up on the floor in pain, and his breathing became quicker. Yuan was stunned. It doesn't seem like he's faking it. Oh my god. What happened to Xixia? He was fine just now, why is he like that all of a sudden? Xixia's having an asthma attack. Qing Shui said anxiously. Xixia has asthma. Hurry, check whether he has any medication on him. I checked it already, there isn't any. He hasn't had an attack for quite some time already, why did it have to happen now? Damn it. Do you need to ask? It must be that ugly freak, Yuan, giving him a scare. Quick, send him to the nurse. Yuan at the side, excuse me, how did I get implicated even when I'm just lying in the coffin? In the midst of the chaos, Qing Shui and another girl quickly prepared to bring Xixia to the school nurse. But then, a paw resounded in the air. Xixia shoved Qing Shui's hand away. He panted while he looked towards Yuan with those suffering but glistening eyes. Wan, take me, damn. He's still at it. Qing Shui's hands stiffened and she stared at Yuan with sullen eyes. At first, she didn't care about Yuan at all. After all, it's very common for women of this type to be jealous, but who knew what this ugly freak did to Xixia that made him so smitten with her? Under everyone's gaze, Qing Shui was slapped once again. Her expression was one moment green and the next moment white. She took a long time before swallowing her anger as she glared at Yuan fiercely. Ugly freak. Didn't you hear Xixia calling you? Qing Shui's little sidekicks chimed in as well. Get over here right now. If it wasn't for you, why would Xixia have a relapse? Everyone started blaming Yuan. Although she felt she was totally innocent this time, she suddenly recalled that an asthmatic person shouldn't do any vigorous exercises and couldn't have fluctuating emotions. When she found out from Qing Shui that Xixia hadn't had a relapse for a long time aside from the serious and sudden relapse today, could it be because he had too much of a shock last night? Anyway, there'd been something wrong with him starting from the beginning of the day. He seemed distracted like he had a big shock. With this thought, Yuan felt a little guilty. Watching Xixia having more and more difficulty with his breathing to the point where it was almost life-threatening, she stopped thinking and quickly jumped out of the crystal coffin, grabbed his arm and helped him up. Chapter 188. She's not an ugly freak. After he was helped up by Yuan, he stuck to her, putting all his weight on her shoulders with his rapid breaths blowing on her neck. Under all the jealous and hateful stares, Yuan really felt like tossing him to the crowd. Why don't all of you carry him since you want it so much? I can't afford this beauty myself. In a flurry, she finally got him to the sickbay. The school's doctor quickly administered a puffer on Xixia and performed a general checkup. 39.5 degrees, he's burning, he needs to be on the drip. He probably suffered a big shock and overexerted himself. He has to rest well now and remember not to be agitated or tire himself out again, the doctor warned sternly. High fever, trauma, overexertion. Upon hearing the doctor's words, Yi Wanwan felt more and more guilty. He wasn't faking it, he really was sick. Traumatized. How long did this guy stay by the lake last night? At the school's clinic, Qing Shui and her clique were there waiting. There was also a large group of girls standing outside. Seeing how weak and frail Si Xia was, a group of young girls were all crying, their hearts aching for him. The school doctor had a headache from all the noise as he glared at them. He only has a fever and an asthma attack. Do you guys have to act as if someone died? Don't crowd around here, it's very stuffy with so many of you here and you could affect the patients. All of you, leave. Only one person can stay behind. After hearing what the school doctor said, Qing Shui looked at Si Xia eagerly. The other girls didn't seem keen on leaving either. As for Yi Wanwan, she dragged this guy all the way here and her arms were on the verge of breaking. After making sure that he was in stable condition, she was ready to leave stealthily. It was obvious that this wasn't a place she should stay for long. But who would have guessed that just as she stepped away, someone squeezed her wrist. The second she lowered her head, she saw a pale, almost transparent hand grabbing the corner of her top. On the narrow bed, Si Xia looked at her like he was being abandoned and protested, "Where are you going?" Yi Wanwan, damn. That's enough, stop acting. Si Xia continued tugging onto Yi Wanwan's sleeves as he turned to the other girls and ordered with an unwelcoming tone, "All of you, get out." Why's he like that? Why Yi Wanwan, the ugly freak again? Annoying. All the girls stomped their feet in anger, but since the hunk had spoken, they could only leave grudgingly, complaining all the while. Qing Shui was shaking in anger by the bedside, completely enraged with fury. Finally, she couldn't hold it in any longer as she turned to Si Xia and asked, enunciating each word carefully, "Si Xia. Do you know what you're doing? Don't tell me you've really fallen for this ugly freak." A bitterness appeared from beneath Si Xia's eyes. "Take back what you just said." Qing Shui was stunned. "Take back what I just said? Does this mean Si Xia is in love with Yi Wanwan? It's impossible. How could Si Xia fall for Yi Wanwan? He must be hiding something." Just as she had that thought, she heard Si Xia speaking, enunciating each word carefully to her, "She's not an ugly freak." Qing Shui was on the verge of spewing blood out. "Si Xia. I think you've really lost your mind. Yi Wanwan, don't celebrate too early." Qing Shui shoved Yi Wanwan aside and ran away. Yi Wanwan wanted to chase after her, but since her sleeve was being tugged at, she could only stretch her hand out in despair. "Don't leave me alone here, babe." Chapter 189, Why Won't He Listen? Imperial City, C Corporation. After Su Yi answered a call, his face changed as he opened the office door anxiously. "Ninth Master, the school just called. They said that young Master Si Xia had a relapse." When Si Yi Han heard that, he looked up from the pile of documents and said with a straight face, "Prepare the car." "Yes." Su Yi was surprised. Young Master Si Xia was mischievous and rebellious. He didn't even listen to his parents, so the old madam specifically instructed the master to look after him. If anything happened to him, master was responsible, or else he might raise the old madam's suspicions again. At Qinghe, only the principal and a handful of top management knew about Si Xia's identity. Hearing that Si Yi Han would be making a trip down personally, the principal went to the gates and awaited his arrival. When he arrived, he even accompanied Si Yi Han to the sickbay himself. Why would he have a relapse when he was doing just fine? Su Yi asked. The principal wiped his sweat, afraid that he'd be blamed for not taking proper care of Si Xia, and replied hastily, This was, because he had a little fright during the rehearsal." Had a little fright? Su Yi didn't understand. How could he have a fright during rehearsal? The principal replied nervously, as he was put on the spot, "The girl that he acts with, she looks a bit frightening." Su Yi, that girl wouldn't happen to be Ms. Yi right. How is he? Si Han asked. He's not in any danger right now. He just has a slight fever, he's on a drip. Qing He, sickbay. After everybody had left, there was only Yi Wanwan and Si Xia left in the sickbay staring at each other. Si Xia refused to release his grip on her sleeve, so Yi Wanwan had no choice but to speak up. What? Do you want to go to the little forest with me again? I didn't want to agitate him, seeing that he's sick at first. The moment she said that, the fingers gripping tightly onto her were released instantly with a swoosh. Yi Wanwan was very satisfied with the result. She withdrew her arm and said, I already made myself very clear last night, don't waste your energy anymore. Su Yi and his master had just arrived at the door of the sickbay when a familiar voice came through. This voice seems to belong to Yi Wanwan. Oh no. Why is she here too? Su Yi's expression changed, and immediately after that, Si Xia's agitated voice was heard, Yi Wanwan. Are you really in love with Si Han? When Su Yi heard that question, the cold sweat on his forehead came trickling down. Why did we have to come at such a time? He was too careless. He should have checked the situation over here first, knowing that Yi Wanwan and Si Xia were in the same school. Inside, Yi Wanwan sighed, I've already said this over 800 times, how many times do you want me to repeat it? My relationship with your ninth uncle is stronger than gold, and our love is like a rock. Unless the mountain becomes flat, unless all the rivers are parched, unless there's thunder in winter, unless there's snow in summer, unless heaven and earth collide, only then would I reject him. Su Yi at the door, this Yi Wanwan's getting more and more crafty. However, young Master Si Xia isn't one to hold back if he has the intention to come between them. Su Yi didn't dare to relax at all. As he was fretting, sure enough, he heard Si Xia's mocking laugh, Yi Wanwan, do you even believe in what you said? TSK, you like him? What do you like about him? His power? Or that face of his? You think I don't know that you weren't willing at all? And the way you dress, you're just trying to scare him off, right? Damn. Yi Wanwan muttered a curse, this brat is definitely hard to deal with. Her cover had been exposed just like that. The veins on Yi Wanwan's forehead popped out. All her patience had run out as she yelled at him, avoid him, my ass. You brat. Why won't you believe me? Must I bring Si Han over here now and have sex with him in front of you for you to believe me? Chapter 190, Can't satisfy your request. Cough 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 cough. Su Yi, who was at the door, choked and started coughing out of shock, nearly coughing his lungs out. Damn. This Yi Wanwan really isn't scared to say anything. She even had the guts to say that she'd have sex with Master right in front of Si Xia. He simply didn't dare to look at his master's expression. At the same time, to prevent Yi Wanwan from saying anything else shocking, Su Yi quickly pushed the door open. Young Master Si Xia, Yi. Ms. Yi, hearing the opening of the door, Yi Wanwan's back stiffened instantly. Then, she turned and saw Su Yi as well as Si Han. Oh my god. Why are these two here? Yi Wanwan stared at Si Han's icy cold expression and felt as if she was the Titanic, with her senses totally knocked out. Her mind was filled with the comment she just blurted out boldly, get Si Han over now and have sex right in front of you. Si Han definitely heard me since I was so loud just now. My integrity. My pure image. They're totally gone. Yi Wanwan's mind was abuzz and her vision was blurry. After a very long time, she managed to regain her senses from the shock and stammered nervously, Si Han, why are you here? Are you here to see Si Xia? He, just. I was teasing this kid just now, don't take it seriously. I really don't have that kind of dirty intention. Si Han remained quiet but looked at her rather subtly. Being silently stared at by Si Han's cold and intense eyes without knowing what was on his mind made her hair stand on end. Just as she was about to charge to the temple to confess her sins and become a nun, his thin lips finally opened slightly and said, "Xiaxia's still a kid." Yi Wanwan didn't understand, huh? So what about it? She totally didn't get what Si Yihan's sudden and random comment meant. Si Yihan lowered his gaze, adjusted his collar, then looked at her and replied lightly, "So, I can't satisfy your request at the moment." Yi Wanwan. Pffffff. Yi Wanwan nearly spewed out blood on the spot. What the hell? Because Si Xia's still a kid, they can't make love in front of him. So when Si Xia's all grown up, then we'll be able to do that? Yeah, right. She really wanted to kowtow to Si Yihan's logic. He even managed to use such a serious tone to say that. As for Si Xia, still lying in bed, Yi Wanwan glanced at him and saw that his face was green and was reaching for the inhaler next to the bed. Poor kid. How are you feeling? Si Yihan finally turned his attention to the teenager on the bed. Si Xia replied coldly, "Hypocrite." Si Yihan ignored his attitude and replied indifferently, "After your drip, get Su Yi to take you back to rest for a couple of days." Yi Wanwan nodded and added on, that's right. Xia, you're too weak. Auntie's really worried, you better head home and have a good rest." Si Xia clutched his chest in pain, almost dying from exasperation from the two of them. Who caused me to be in this state? Now they're worried about me. Why didn't they care about my weak body just now when they were torturing me? Chapter 191, Perform the Way You Are. At the same time, in the girls' dormitory, Cheng Shui's dressing table was a complete mess. There were broken mirror shards and expensive skincare products all over the floor. The other three girls in the dormitory were trembling and hiding in the corner. Nobody dared to go close to her. The three of them pushed each other in fright, and after Cheng Shui was done thrashing everything around her, one of the girls with short hair slowly walked towards her. "Little Shui, don't be mad anymore. That ugly girl, Yi Wanwan, is shameless and scheming." Si Xia was definitely taken in by her flowery speech. "Actually, I have a suggestion that will reveal the true colors of that ugly freak for sure." Cheng Shui looked over at her in annoyance. All the other girls pressed her. "What suggestion? Hurry, tell us." The girl with short hair spoke mysteriously. "Do you guys know what Yi Wanwan's most afraid of?" "What is it?" The two of them didn't know, and Cheng Shui also seemed to be racking her brains for the answer. The girl with short hair replied excitedly, "It's obviously removing her makeup. After being in the same class for so long, has any one of you seen her without any makeup?" The two girls turned to look at each other as the taller and larger girl shook her head. "Oh, we really haven't. But we can't be sure about this, right? Why would that ugly freak reveal her real face? She barely managed to conceal that terrifying face of hers with her thick makeup." The other sharp-chinned girl said mockingly, "That ugly freak thought that since nobody's seen how she really looks like, she could shamelessly declare how pretty she really looks and say that she put on this makeup just to prevent people from getting jealous. I really have no idea where she got the guts to say stuff like that. Probably because everybody's as dumb as her." Also, there were rumors saying that not only was she born ugly, she probably got failed plastic surgery, so she had no choice but to doll herself up like a ghost. Yeah, right. Failed plastic surgery. For real. Whether it's real or not, we'll find out once we see for ourselves, right? The girl with short hair said with a sinister smile. The two girls didn't understand. Huh? How do we find out? The short-haired girl smiled mysteriously and walked towards Cheng Shui to whisper something in her ear. Cheng Shui's cold and gloomy eyes gradually brightened up as she glanced at the short-haired girl like she was very satisfied with her suggestion. "This idea isn't bad, we'll carry it out according to your plan, then." In the blink of an eye, it was finally the day of the performance. The whole school was spick and span. There were banners welcoming the leaders of the school everywhere, and the big hall was decorated with lights and streamers. After Si Han arrived at the school, Si Xia was brought home to nurse his illness and had only returned to school the day before the performance. Si Xia's dumb fans had been silent for a while, allowing Yi Wanwan to have a few days of peace. After the performance, major exams would be nearing, and by then, she'd be able to completely shake off this crazy suitor. Thinking about how close that day was, Yi Wanwan didn't even mind being in that stiff costume. Qing Shui had put in quite a bit of effort to prepare this costume, which made her look even more terrifying than usual. With the wig covered in cobwebs and the tattered costume made out of a monster hide, it looked truly demonic. Everybody, line up to get your makeup done. Hurry up, hurry up. Except you, Yi Wanwan, you don't need any makeup, just perform the way you are. Ha 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 ha, why would she need any makeup? She can just go up on stage with her usual makeup look. Chapter 192, An outstanding performance. Thus, Yi Wanwan's makeup was as per usual. Paired with her wig and costume, the effect was outstanding. As for the separate makeup room backstage, 3 girls were busy going in circles around Qing Shui, getting her styled and ready. Wow! Little Shui, you look breathtaking today. She's stunning every single day, alright? Our little Shui has been the beauty queen of the school for 3 consecutive years. All this flattery put Qing Shui in a good mood. She brushed her fingers covered in lace gloves against her delicate face gently, then asked stiffly, "Have all of you done what I asked?" The short-haired girl nodded in excitement. Done, everything's in place. Don't worry about it, little Shui. You'll definitely be able to watch an outstanding performance today. At this moment, the tall and plump girl asked hesitantly, "Will Si Xia be mad at us for doing this?" Qing Shui's face turned frigid instantly. What you meant was, will Si Xia be mad at me because of that ugly freak? Upon seeing that Qing Shui was about to enter into a rage, the 3 of them quickly waved their hands. Of course not. Why would he? Yes, wait till Si Xia sees how that ugly freak actually looks like. He'll die from disgust for sure. With that comment, Qing Shui's face turned warmer. If anything goes wrong today, the 3 of you can forget ever hanging out with me again. Yes, everything will definitely go smoothly today. We have everything in order already, little Shui, don't worry. At the front of the stage, the lights shone, accompanied by a burst of music as male and female hosts went up on stage with bright smiles. Below the stage, the students, teachers, and leaders were seated. After the hosts finished their opening speech and the school leader made a long and redundant speech, the show finally began. There were many varieties of performances by the different classes: singing, dancing, and comedic skits, everything under the sun. They fully showcased the students' talent and the progress of the school towards their goal. Enthusiastic applause erupted from the audience from time to time. Senior year's Class F's performance was placed at the end. It was rare to have both the school's beauty and hunk perform on the same stage. When the news was first announced, everyone highly anticipated this performance. Next up, we have Senior Year Class F playing Snow White. I believe everyone is familiar with this classic fairy tale, but today, our classmates are bringing a new twist to this play. It'll be like nothing you've seen before. Let's give them a warm welcome. Hua la la, the loudest applause for the night resounded from the audience. Initially, the class thought that the audience would be sleepy from the long wait, but they were all suddenly energized by the thunderous applause. The teenagers raised their phones to take photos and cheered endlessly. Si Xia! Si Xia! Si Xia! Oh! My dream boy is finally about to appear. Qing Shui! Qing Shui! Do your best, goddess! During the applause and shouts, the curtains on stage slowly rose and Qing Shui stood gracefully in front of a mirror in a gorgeous red, European, medieval-style dress with a queen's crown on her head. The beauty's so gorgeous today. She's definitely the prettiest queen in history. Why isn't the goddess playing Snow White? This doesn't make sense. Snow White's supposed to be more beautiful than the queen. Since Qing Shue's acting as the queen, who's going to be Snow White? Don't you know? Yi Wanwan is Snow White. What? Yi Wanwan? Are you kidding me? Isn't she the ugliest girl in Qinghe? Chapter 193, Kill Her. She's hurting our eyes. On stage. Queen, mirror, mirror, who's the fairest of them all? Mirror, Queen, you're beautiful. But I see a young lady whose tattered clothes aren't able to conceal her beauty. She's the fairest of them all. Queen, that's impossible. Nobody can be prettier than me. Who is she? Mirror, she, with lips as red as roses, hair as black as coal and skin as fair as snow, she is Snow White. At this moment, the props and background on the stage turned gloomy as Yi Wanwan appeared on stage. She had a messy wig on and wore a tattered skirt. She walked barefoot on the floor and the thick makeup applied on her face made her look scarier than a witch. Ha 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 ha, is this really Snow White? This is absolutely one of the ugliest Snow Whites in history. No wonder the hosts said there's a twist, they're really creative. How is this creative? This is totally because the ugly freak didn't want to let go of the role of Snow White, so everybody had no choice but to change the script. When Snow White appeared, the school leaders sitting in the front row were taken aback as well. It was only after they heard the narrator explain that in order to protect Snow White, her mother forced her to doll up this way from childhood that they started nodding, so that's the reason why. During the chance encounter between the prince and the ugly princess, the prince was moved by the princess' kindness and fell deeply in love with her, despite her atrocious look. The performers thought about it long and hard and finally came up with a proper ending which was not bad. The teachers and leaders looked very satisfied and kept singing praises. The moment the hunter appeared on stage, the audience started roaring, "Kill her quickly! Kill her, she's hurting our eyes," and "Let the prince and queen be together happily." As for the moment Snow White was poisoned by the witch with a poison apple, everyone in the audience cheered. Judging by the audience's reaction, the play was totally recreated. Finally, the highly anticipated prince appeared. Watching their dream boy in a dashing prince costume walking slowly towards the crystal coffin, all the girls in the audience looked as if their mothers passed away, their faces filled with horror and heartache. The hunk had sacrificed so much for this performance. Yi Wanwan had nearly fallen asleep in the crystal coffin when she heard a pair of footsteps. Then she woke herself up and steeled herself to prevent any accidents from occurring. If this guy came over and suddenly kissed her for real, she'd definitely be torn apart by the girls in school. She could feel the breaths of Si Xia getting closer and closer and closer. "Do you know how many girls want to be kissed by me?" After some time, he murmured these words in her ear and then, the breaths finally went away. After being attacked continuously by her ultimate move, this brat behaved much better but was still out of place in the end. Yi Wanwan heaved a sigh of relief and quickly acted as if she was awoken by the kiss, completing the act. Thank God this performance was finally over. And up until the last scene, Snow White still hadn't revealed her real face. "I thought Snow White would reveal her real face to scare the audience," one of the school leaders laughed. The few teachers who knew what happened tried to smooth things over awkwardly. "Ha ha ha, that would be a cliché, wouldn't it? This way please, we've booked a hotel." Chapter 194, The True Image of Snow White. The performance went considerably well. All the teachers and school leaders sighed in relief that the leaders were satisfied. Next up was obviously a feast for dinner. The students also left the stage, one after another. As Class F was the last to perform, Yi Wanwan and a few other students were tidying up the props on stage. "They're gone, they're gone. The teachers and leaders are all gone." The tall and plump girl was panting as she informed Qing Shui and the others backstage. Their scripts had been strictly vetted by the teacher, and since many teachers and leaders were around before, they couldn't do anything, but things were different now. Ching Shui signaled the short-haired girl and the girl gave a knowing smile, then immediately took the microphone and walked to the stage. Everybody, please don't leave yet. There's still the post-credits scene. The girl's abrupt voice resounded throughout the big hall, attracting quite a bit of attention from the audience about to leave. Post-credits scene? What post-credits scene? Yi Wanwan, who was packing up the props on stage, turned to look at the girl speaking. The girl was the host and also one of Ching Shui's sidekicks. Hearing this, the students about to leave the hall turned towards the stage in curiosity. Post-credits scene? What post-credits scene? I don't know. We're not watching a movie, why would there be a post-credits scene? The short-haired girl turned to Yi Wanwan with a fake smile. Does everybody want to find out how Snow White really looks like? The crowd didn't understand. How Snow White really looks like? What does she mean? Is she referring to Yi Wanwan? Hearing this, Yi Wanwan frowned. She knew that after what had happened with Si Xia, Ching Shui wouldn't let it go so easily. But her school pranks were childish, like pouring water over her, and giving her dead rats and isolating her. She didn't care about these pranks and didn't intend on wasting her energy on these kids. As for today, the one whom she had her guard up against was Si Xia. Now that the performance ended, she was completely relaxed. However, the moment the short-haired girl finished speaking, a big pail of water came splashing down onto the unguarded Yi Wanwan who was on stage. In an instant, Yi Wanwan was soaked through like a drenched chicken. Ha 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 ha, this is hilarious. So this is the post-credits scene. The audience cheered crazily. Yi Wanwan stood rooted to the ground. Her face turned black instantly. It's not over. How many times do they want to use the same prank? The short-haired girl asked happily. Quiet, quiet. Take a guess, what did we pour over her? Hearing this, Yi Wanwan was speechless. Everyone started discussing. Could it be acid? I don't think so. Pouring acid on that ugly freak is like giving her plastic surgery. Just a hint, this isn't just ordinary water. The girl with short hair hinted. That can't be makeup remover, can it? After the girl with short hair heard the answer from someone in the crowd, she immediately smiled and said, that's right. It's makeup remover. Yi Wanwan couldn't care less at the beginning, but the moment she heard those two words, her face changed. She quickly hid her face in her hands, but it was already too late. That big bucket of greasy liquid was emptied, covering her entire head. She reached her arms out instinctively to touch her face and her tacky foundation stuck to her fingers. Yi Wanwan stood there dumbfounded and didn't regain her senses for a long time. She didn't expect that one day she'd actually capsize in the gutter. Fuck, this group of little bastards. How could they? They actually poured makeup remover all over me. Chapter 195, The Definition of a Beauty, That's Way Too Creative. Ha 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 ha, it's killing me. Quick, quick, everybody, take out your phones and take pictures. We've never seen how this ugly freak actually looks like. Come over everybody. Look at how beautiful Snow White actually is. Haha. Some girls suddenly obtained water hoses and started to spray water onto Yi Wanwan's face. The crazy peals of laughter and gleeful screams went through the roof. Not far off, Jiang Yanran was pushed to the back by the crazy crowd and couldn't pass through. She could only stand there and watch, on the verge of crying. Many schools had a community like this. Those at the bottom of the food chain were the targets of bullying. Just because she didn't look pretty, Yi Wanwan had become a target as well. The costume that Yi Wanwan was wearing was made of animal skin and was water resistant, but the outer layer of fur was very absorbent. At this moment, it was as if a heavy piece of metal was stuck to her body. The soaked wig was also stuck onto the melting makeup on her face, making her look extremely horrific. And the sorrier she looked, the louder those people laughed. Soon, the hall was filled with people. The performance had already ended, but their party had just begun. Yi Wanwan stood in the middle of the stage, streams of water gushing at her in all directions. No matter where she turned, streams of water followed. Ugly freak. Stop hiding. What are you hiding? Didn't you say that you're as beautiful as an angel? Let's have everyone take a look then. The ugliest girl in Qinghe's history is about to reveal her real face. Don't miss out, everyone. At this moment, Qing Shui stood silently by the side in her gorgeous gown and delicate makeup, admiring as Yi Wanwan's face got fouled up by her wig. She admired how she was like a little clown providing amusement on stage. TSK, just a lowly, dirty, and ugly worm. And she actually dared to steal my man away from me? Yi Wanwan narrowed her eyes dangerously, slowly clenching her fists, and finally, her fury rose from these brats' bullying and humiliation. In the end, she didn't move nor did she keep hiding. She slowly lowered her arms that she'd used to block the streams of water. In the next second, her fingers were on her collar as she slowly unfastened the buttons of the costume, one by one. Woo! Come look at her, everyone. The ugly freak is actually stripping right in front of everybody. She's so shameless. Even the two girls hosing her down also stopped what they were doing in shock and took out their phones to take a video. This was much more exciting than the performance. While everyone was shouting and whistling, Yi Wanwan didn't stop what she was doing. She continued unfastening every single button all the way down. The heavy costume fell to the ground with a crash. She also took off the inner lining of the costume until she was left in her own plain white dress. After that, she used the inner lining of the costume to wipe the residual dirt off her face. Finally, her fingers fumbled around her ears as she removed the soaking wet wig and headgear off her head. In the next second, the girl's jet black hair fell down her shoulders like a waterfall the moment she untied it, and her face, which was initially covered by her wig, was completely revealed to everyone. Through the big screen behind her, her image was magnified so everybody could see. The crazy shouts in the big hall immediately went as silent as the cicadas in winter. Those who were whistling, those who were shouting, and those who were taking videos, stared at the girl who had black hair like a waterfall, her skin as white as snow, and who was stunning beyond words. They were all dumbstruck. During this moment of dead silence, the girl threw the wig she was holding to the floor. She looked up and swept through everyone like an icy blade with eyes that sparkled and spoke, enunciating every single word. Are you done? This is the definition of a beauty. Even when she was as frigid as frost, she was still extremely beautiful. Chapter 196, Satisfied with what you saw. Under the gaze of all those people, she took off her tattered and heavy costume, removed her wig and washed away the thick makeup and dirt off her face. In a moment, it was as if a dusty pearl saw the light again, and it was so dazzling that it almost blinded their eyes. Her arrogant and fierce gaze was akin to a fiery blaze, burning down her disguise to practically nothing. Her magnificence blossomed in an instant. When Si Xia received the news and rushed over, he saw this scene and stood there, dumbfounded. The people who had mocked her and watched the show were now stunned with disbelief. The only one who was calm, probably the only one who knew the truth, was Ling Dong. After some time, a sudden clang interrupted the silence in the big hall. Someone had accidentally knocked over a prop. Only then did everyone regain their senses. The whole hall was filled with alarming cries and discussion. Damn. She's gorgeous. She's stunning, all right. She's extremely beautiful. What's going on here? That's Yi Wanwan. That's impossible. I must be dreaming. How could that ugly freak, Yi Wanwan, be so beautiful? Touch my heart, it's beating so quickly, I feel like I'm in love. This is the goddess of my dreams. Oh my god. This was the ugliest girl in Qinghe, you say? This must be a trick you guys put on us juniors. This big sister is so alluring. Hey, little brat, you haven't even grown facial hair yet and you're already trying to fight with us over your senior. First come, first serve, understand? In the middle of the stage, Yi Wanwan looked at everybody, even rowdier than before. and she furrowed her brows. Especially the boys who had mocked and ridiculed her just a second ago, but who were now calling her a goddess. Her original plan was to persist until graduation, but with that one prank spoiling everything, it was all over after holding on for so long. Just one suitor could almost take away half a life. With such a big group, she didn't have enough lives for everyone. Yi Wanwan's head was buzzing when she noticed Jiang Yan Ran standing in the crowd. Jiang Yan Ran seemed to be pushed by the shoving crowd as she fell to the ground in pain. Everyone's attention was on her, there were even people squeezing up to the front to get a closer look. It was total chaos and nobody noticed Jiang Yan Ran at all. Seeing that the crowd was still pushing and shoving, Yi Wanwan quickly went down the stage. When the shoving crowd saw Yi Wanwan walking over, they were all extremely excited and automatically parted to create an opening for her, like a tide. Where's the goddess going? I don't know. Is she going to find Xia? Xia watched as Yi Wanwan walked towards him and his pupils constricted. However, everybody saw that Yi Wanwan passed Xia and walked over to Jiang Yan Ran and said, "Sprained your ankle?" Jiang Yan Ran shook her head in shock. She never expected that Yi Wanwan would take notice of her even in such a situation. I'm fine. Yi Wanwan frowned and helped her up. I'll bring you to the sickbay. Oh, the goddess actually went to find Jiang Yan Ran. The gossipy crowd was instantly disappointed, but everyone's eyes couldn't bear to leave her. Yi Wanwan was about to leave but seemed to have recalled something and paused, then looked towards Cheng Shui, curled her lips and said, "Great goddess Cheng, this was what you wanted, right? Are you satisfied with what you saw?" With that, Yi Wanwan took Jiang Yan Ran and left leisurely. You're tuning in to the Blissful Bookshelf YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.